to the Power Relay with Micah Clay. A series of conversations with the technicians, leaders, engineers, and innovators critical to ensuring power reliability, safety, education, and innovation. We discuss the many facets of the power industry with the unsung heroes who power the world in the 21st century. Sponsored by Southern Staffing Group, we support your power industry talent acquisition efforts. If it involves power, we have you covered. Plug in and join our host, Micah Clay, veteran, entrepreneur, and power enthusiast as we delve into the world of power.
Codes and standards allow us to work safely, offer technical guidance, implement universal applications of standards and procedures, and oftentimes contribute to the regulation of an industry. During our recent conversation with Drew Welton, we briefly discussed the process of how IEEE proposes and legislates new standards, which piqued my interest in the topic. Having followed our next guest, Thomas Domitrovich, Director of Codes and Standards for Eaton on LinkedIn for quite some time, I couldn't think of a more qualified person to discuss this topic with. Thomas frequently presents live discussions on the development and implementation of new codes and standards, and does so while showing everyone in real time what goes into producing these valuable resources. Thomas, an electrical engineer, started his power in 1989 as an engineer in training with power systems development before joining Gilbert Commonwealth as a professional engineer. After 5 years with Gilbert Commonwealth, Thomas earned the chance to join Eaton as an application engineer in 1996 and has remained there since. Thomas has held many positions while at Eaton, including roles as product manager, national application engineer, application engineering manager, and vice president of technical sales before assuming his current role as director of code and standards. Thomas, I've enjoyed consuming and attempting to digest your content and want to say thanks once again for joining me on an interview. Can you tell our audience a little bit more about yourself?
Sure thing. Wow, what an introduction. Thanks, Micah. It's great to be here. I really enjoy. I'm glad we connected, and I'm looking forward to our discussion. You know, when I think about just my motivation and whatnot, and you look at your journey and your life, and as you're reading that, I was thinking about my time at Gilbert Commonwealth, my power systems development. Man, that seems so long ago, but I'll tell you, and it was at power systems development that I realized I wanted to be a power systems engineer. When I was in school, I was really good at digital. I learned in the microprocessor world. I thrived in the electronics and your amplifiers. I realized the value of capacitors and cleaning things up. But I liked the digital, and I really enjoyed that. But when I got to do a short circuit study by hand and a coordination study by hand, I built my own light table. It was like somebody, it was just like somebody lit a fire under me. Like, this is where you want to be. And I always had a passion for learning, just from when I was little, working with my uncle. Most of my uncles and my father worked in a steel mill. And Jones and Laughlin Steel Corporation, El Equipa. And, every summer we all worked as a family building things, whether it be garages, putting roofs on, remodeling places and whatnot. And I thrived off of just learning. And now I try to teach, so it's just like sharing what you do. We're human beings. And I realized as I go through my career, I learned things. And now it's like you're at a point in your life where you want to try to help other people learn things as well and thrive. And we're human beings. So communicating, talking to each other. We had a great discussion earlier, just talking about tech and how we do things and get things done. That's how we learn as engineers in our industry. It's a matter of communications and connections.
Absolutely. And I could agree with you more. I think one of the things that is just embedded in the human nature is this desire to give back. And if you find somebody that's got a passion to do that, We definitely are short in manpower, as we talked about before we hopped on as well.
Yep.
And anything we can do from this aspect, and hence having you on and spreading the wealth and knowledge of this, is to make folks aware. Like, this is a fantastic industry. To your point,
Yep.
it's something that, like, I'm passionate about. Probably not to your level and the understanding of. Well, definitely not to your level of knowledge and understanding with regards to codes and standards and turning wrenches. But it is just truly a phenomenal industry to be in. And kudos to you. And for anybody who hasn't taken the time to watch Thomas's lives on LinkedIn,
check it out.
Truly fantastic wealth of knowledge covering various procedures, different states and statuses of codes and standards, what's going on internally at Eaton, what those processes look like. Truly a phenomenal wealth of information. So I want to give you a personal thank you for everything you're contributing to the space, man. I think it's phenomenal.
Thanks, I appreciate it. And like you say, it's a matter of and for somebody who's thinking about where they want to be or where they want to go. I don't know about you, but when I was young, if we didn't talk about, nobody asked me, "Hey Tom, what do you want to be when you grow up?" It was, where are you going to go to school? Things like that, right? And I didn't know either. I mean, I was like, I just knew I want to be in the ballpark. I want to have fun. I want to enjoy what I'm doing, because the moment you don't enjoy what you're doing, it becomes work, right?
Absolutely.
So you got to pick something that you feel passionate about, that you enjoy, and you will succeed. And the moment I always tell my boss will ask me, so how's it going? I'll say, well, hey, I'm having fun. So I'm not going anywhere,
Yeah,
but
good.
The moment I'm not having fun, the moment I get bored, that's when I say, you know what, I need to do something a little different. And you need that spice. You need to find where you want to go. And don't, like, I went to school for electrical engineering, but when I knew that if you just read through what you read through my years of experience and where I've been, I haven't been designing circuit boards. I haven't been designing a product. I've been in applications and codes and standards. Your degree just basically, I always say this, college teaches you and school teaches you how to learn a mass amount of information in a short period of time. Yep. And once you can learn something, no matter where you go, you will succeed as long as you enjoy it.
I agree. And my father also to that gave very similar advice. It's like a college degree shows that you can complete something that's very difficult over a 4-term period and show that you have the ability to complete it. That's the benefit. Yep. Now, there's more than that. I'm not crapping on college.
But in essence, I mean, it boils down to that. And really, it doesn't have to be a college degree. I mean, you could go into a trade, and there are people that I've seen who have graduated from college who are, I would say, in their careers, never really achieving what they would want to have achieved. Mm-hmm. But if they would have taken the time to say, you know what, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go into a trade. My nephews went into the HVAC industry. They have aspirations of owning their own business and running their own shop and having trucks of their own. And they have larger ambitions and they're very good at what they do. Right. So if you're good with your hands, if you enjoy that type of immediate gratification of, I'm going to work on something and I'm going to see, and I'm going to see the benefits of the fruits of my labor. That, I tell you, that is, there is something to be said about that. And it doesn't take a college degree to get that done. No.
It definitely doesn't. And to your point, I'm seeing right now, obviously our business is knowing the market and comps for engineers and technicians and stuff. And it is mind-boggling to some of the engineers that are professional 4-year PEs, maybe not licensed or engineering degreed engineers, but maybe perhaps don't have their PE. I'm seeing NETA 3s and 4s that never went to college, maybe did the military, got out, did something, segued in, and literally just took it on like you would at IBW doing an electrician's journeyman's course. I'll just throw out the numbers. I'm seeing on average on some of these hourly rates up to a NETA 4. I know some of the W-2 casuals are up to 120 an hour. Nice. On average, internal, just regular W-2s up to 85. Some are even seeing $90 an hour offers. And we've got engineers where I can't get them over 115. So that just goes to show you, there's other viable pathways to success outside of the traditional 4-year degree. Now, do we still need those? 100%. Not
Sure.
crapping on college. We need those PEs. We need the people that
Absolutely.
understand those things, and doctors and everything else. But to that point, there are other viable pathways to achieve that success and follow your passions, to your point of sticking in a field. Like, love this field. And I think it's just fantastic for that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely right. Absolutely. Love it.
Now, can you give us an overview kind of your role as director of codes and standards at Eaton, and kind of what your main responsibilities are?
Yeah, sure. So if you think about what I do from an Eaton perspective internally, if I look at what my Eaton brethren expect from me, I sort of, I'm like a I try to get people communicating. So we have a lot of different divisions. We have a lot of different businesses. I'll call them businesses, although we don't like to use that term, but they are. They're separate. Like, you have a residential business, you have a commercial business, you have a hazardous locations, but these are different areas of our company that make products. And they'll release products to the industry. And we worry about, or at least I think about, three key areas that I make sure everybody in our company thinks about. As a director of codes and standards, I handle electrical, I handle air, vehicles that go in the air, and vehicles that go on the ground. So ground vehicles and air vehicles. So I handle all of the products that we make from a company perspective. And I want everybody to think about three key things. Safety, number one. Safety of the products that we're bringing out to the industry. So anybody who's using our products, we want to make sure that they're safe and they are built to high quality. Whether you have a standard or not, right, I want to make sure it's safe.
Absolutely.
Liability is another big one. So not just liability from an Eaton perspective, but liability of contractors and inspectors and homeowners. When you elect to use a product and install it, if you don't use it correctly, it's going to hurt you, right?
Absolutely.
It could hurt you. It could burn your house down. It could, I call it an unintended rapid disassembly in the field, right? You don't want that to happen. So I have to think about, when something like that happens, why did it happen? What went wrong, either in the communication, in the codes, in the standards? What was the issue? And we want to make sure that when we bring solutions, we address liability for all people involved. And then the third key area is market acceptance. So when I come out with a new widget, when Eaton comes out with a new product that maybe the industry has never seen before, I could tell you, a cell phone, right? So there was a point in time when I was a kid, I didn't know what a cell phone was, right?
Same
and all
here.
of a sudden, right? See, you remember this? You're not
We're aging ourselves.
Come on. I mean, I didn't have a cell phone when I was a kid, and you saw them on television. They're these big boxes with the antennas and everything, and the military probably used them first, and then all of a sudden, you've got these things here where you got the power of what puts you on the moon in the palm of your hand, and
Absolutely.
You want to make sure that it doesn't hurt you, right? You want to make sure that when you plug this in, the battery powers it up. It knows when to stop powering. It knows all these different things. So I try to help our product lines in their journey to deliver a product to the market, make sure that their solutions are safe, that we don't have liability issues and concerns, and the market is going to accept it. And codes and standards helps in those three key areas. The National Electrical Code is your installation requirements. Product standards, that's your UL, and from an international perspective, I use IEC, the IEC international standards for not the independent electrical contractors, but the IEC international standards. So they use the same acronym. So you have the international product standards, you have IEEE standards, you have UL standards, and then those are around bringing the product. And then you have the NEC, National Electrical Code. The international standards, TC64 manages their 60364 standards for installation. That's your international installation standards. And then you have maintenance, 70B. You have all these different aspects of codes and standards that address something a little different in the proper application of the product.
Gotcha.
And hopefully, at the end of the day, nobody gets hurt, nobody gets killed, and everybody benefits from the use of electricity. That's my goal. So
I love that.
Yeah, it's honestly, Micah, I did not really, I would say in my whole career, it wasn't until I became the AFCI and GFCI product manager that really introduced me to the true value of codes and standards. Before that, as a power systems engineer, it was like, okay, I got to know the code. I worked at nuclear power plant, Crystal River Unit 3 down in Florida. I worked on fossil power plants. I worked on all these different applications, and I knew what my design was. And then somebody would eventually say, "Are you violating the code?" And I'd have to go back and read the code and make sure I'm not violating anything there. And it was a mystery to me. But then when I got in from an Eaton perspective, bring in products, I was a product manager for communication hardware and software. And the UL standards was just one of those things where I had to get through to deliver a product. But when I became an AFCI and GFCI product manager, that's when I got introduced to people who lost their home, who lost a family member, a pet, to either a fire in their home or electric shock. And that is when I don't know how to explain it. It changes a person. When you talk, I'm very empathetic, right?
Same.
So you cry, I'm going to cry. I'm happy. Okay. So when you talk to somebody who lost their house, or you talk to a firefighter who has to deal with that on a daily basis, you gain a different respect for the solutions you're bringing to the market and a different respect for the standards and codes around doing that. So that I think in my career, from a career perspective, that reality hit, and it was an eye opener to me. And that's when I really got the passion from a codes and standards perspective.
I think that's a fantastic way to get to that point, because like you said, you get to see the real outcomes of when those things aren't enforced, so definitely valid. And you mentioned like air vehicles and stuff like that. So are you dealing with like FAA standards and stuff like that? Is there a crossover?
Oh man, I tell you. So I, and my background is electrical and power systems engineering. And, last year was, they told us, they said, okay, they told my group, I'm within Eaton, they call my group a center of excellence. So I'm the center of excellence for codes and standards. So all of our electrical products, I had my hands in everything to make sure that we were, if they were going to create a new widget that there were no product standards for, I'd have to figure that out. If the code needed to change, et cetera. But now, as of January of last year, I had the responsibility for land vehicles and air vehicles. So now I'm in to all of those other regulations, and I'm still drinking from a fire hose.
I think it's like the NTSB is probably involved now, the FAA. And so like, how long does it take you personally? Like, okay, you're a product manager for this air vehicle unit. How much due diligence and research is required on your end to even get spun up on that?
So
to make sure you're not screwing it up.
Yeah. But here's the other very important part. You're not alone.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of people will take too much on themselves.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
And even as a manager, I've spoken with, I've watched, and I've been under the management of individuals who wanted to control everything. Okay. Where you're either a manager or a leader. And so what I try not to be a manager. I try to be a leader. So what I did when it comes to moving over to an area like aerospace and land vehicles, I am not going to walk in there like, I know what I'm doing and this is what you're going to do. I go in, these people have been making products for years. They are like number one in the industry in a lot of the aspects of solutions they're bringing to either aerospace or vehicles. I didn't even know we made, it was a while ago I took my vehicle to a Ford dealership, and I was at the service desk, and the guy looks at me and he says, who you work for? I said, I work for Eaton. He goes, oh, we have a lot of your products. And I looked over on the wall, and I'm seeing a Siemens box over there. And I'm like, wait a second. I said, that's a Siemens enclosure. I said, well, your service equipment Siemens. He goes, you make electrical equipment? And we make a lot of vehicle stuff.
Right.
Everything from the buttons to take the windows up to turbochargers and all this other stuff. So my modus operandi is to go in, understand what people are doing, and offer any suggested changes, right, from a procedural perspective.
Gotcha.
But I am a hands-on person. I need to get myself inserted. It's like if you've never played basketball before, okay, and now it's like, okay, Tom, you're going to manage the team. If I was the coach, a new coach of a basketball team, you would go, oh my gosh, what is he doing? He's out in the middle of the court. He's asking for the ball. I mean, come on. I want to get in there and I want to help people. And the only way to really help people is to understand what everybody's doing and to be engaged. So when it comes to learning on that side of the family, I am all of my ISO standards, my IAS standards, all of those different groups. I listen.
Right.
My dad and my mom used to tell me, God gave you two of these and
one
two of these and only one of these. Use these more often. And there is a lot of value to that. Where you go in and you watch what people are saying, you listen, you try to understand. And then if you need to interject, then you do. But otherwise, I'm there to break down barriers. If they're sitting there saying, look, I can't get a product out, we can't pass a standard, I have to, and in a lot of cases, in many cases, just in general, it's never my fault. It's always someone else's fault, right?
Is it always?
It's always someone else's fault. I'll get calls from an electrical contractor say, you need to call this inspector and you need to tell him, this, and that. But then you realize, wait a second, it's not the standard that has to change. We need to do things a little differently. And then you get the right people talking in a room and it's amazing what you can get done. You realize you're working with smart people, very educated, and all they need to do is communicate. And so my role, from trying to learn more things is to get engaged, use your ears and eyes a lot, listen, watch what's going on, and only interject when you think you can really provide some value.
Absolutely.
Now,
this is one I find intriguing. I've got my own personal story with that. So I was an FC on my enlisted side, so I consider myself to be a crap hot tech, right? Knew how to fix everything. Crossed over to the dark side or the officer side via Seaman Admiral 21, became an ASWO, which is anti-submarine warfare officer. I was in charge of the sonar technicians. I'm a technician at heart. That's what I love, to be in the wrenches. I've never had my butt chewed. So Mustang officer, right? But I'm still an ensign in their eyes. And I would want to get in there and work on crap because that's the background I came from. I'm a technician. I want to do it. Sir, you're not a technician anymore. You're a leader. So that was a big one for me to overcome, is like trying to get out and really get out of that. And I think a lot of people, it's a very important point that you mentioned, is management vice leadership.
Oh yeah.
And the ability to delegate and give autonomy and trust and all those other things. That is something that is slept on across leadership experiences, and not everybody does it well and give that autonomy and gain that trust and all those other things. So
and
your point, couldn't agree more. And I think it's very salient.
And in some cases, some people aren't meant for those roles.
Absolutely.
It's just like anything. If you think about like a submarine, right? So if you just think of that environment, if you are the best doggone sonar guy, you're not going to want that person over on some other piece of equipment, because
absolutely not.
This is what they're good at. This is what they enjoy. If they're not going to be happy over there, if they're going to fail, set them up for success, find out what you want to do. And that goes for life in general.
Absolutely.
If you're having fun, go do it. Have fun. Don't think that you're less because you're not in this specific role. We all play a function, and every function is needed on a team. So,
Absolutely.
and every role is important. So I never, I used to always say in my past, if you asked me when I first joined Eaton, somebody would ask me where I wanted to be at Eaton. And they would say, do you want to go to sales? And I'd say, I'm not a salesman. I'm an electrical engineer. Right. I'm not a salesman. And I would emphasize, I am not a salesman. I am not a salesman. And then at one point in my career, I realized, I think I was pitching an idea for an engineering project. And I'm like,
realized you were a salesman.
I'm a salesman. We're all salesmen in some.
We all,
you
man.
could be a hardcore engineer, but if you can't pitch your idea and get someone to give you funding for that project,
yeah, exactly,
you're not going to succeed. So you need all aspects.
And to your point on that one, man, that's like recruiting in general, right? So you have to sell your BD clients, and then have to sell candidates on a roll, and then make sure they merge and meet. Like everything we do across the board is sales, and and that is one of those. If you can learn the ability to communicate effectively what your purpose, your impact, and all that other good stuff is, it sells. It's still
absolutely
the same
right.
Thing.
And what you don't want to do, and this is, I think, what I wouldn't say it's a learning thing. It was a part of that reality that when you start realizing, I don't know if I would call it sales, but it is. You're trying to convince somebody to support your project or your idea. But what you don't want to do, and the difficult spot that, at least for me, that I don't want to be ever in, is selling something or selling an idea that doesn't make sense.
Yep.
It hurts electrical safety. It's just being sold to make the buck, right?
Right.
So that's the I think some of the where you might see some people fall into the wrong rut, where they say, and I get grief even internally. I will drive either I'll support a code requirement or I'll support a position, and they'll say, well, that hurts our business. And I'll go, well, you need to adjust your business because it's not the right thing to do. It
impacts one of those three things that we talked about earlier, right? Safety
exactly. Yeah. And once I related back to one of those things, safety, the liability and the acceptance.
Yep.
Then they go, oh, okay, I get it, But if it doesn't impact those types of things and it's a nice to have, I'm not going to tell you gotta have it. I'm going to say, hey, this is an option for you if this is something that you're looking for. So, but a lot of people will look at like technologies as being a salesperson selling something that somebody doesn't need. And that's typically because they don't understand the value it brings to whomever it is that you're talking to.
100%.
So in some cases, you may have a product or a solution or a position that has no value to me.
Right.
Okay. And it's from your perspective, you'd have to say, wait a second. I'm not even going to pitch this to him because it has no value to him. He's not interested in this. So you're not going to waste your time and my time, and you're going to do something. You're going to take that to the right opportunity, to the right individual. So, it's that balance that you really have to understand. And it goes back to your core either beliefs or your core ethics. All that stuff. Oh, there's the.
I love it.
You. I gotta turn that off.
Work this time. I won't do it, but
but those are the. But I tell you what, I was so passionate because I'm a very technical person. I love the technical aspects of everything. I want to understand everything. It's that technician in me too, that it's like I want to take it apart. I want to understand how this works. And then the more you understand how something works, any types of problems that go on, you can go, oh, I know exactly why that is. Yeah. So, and I do that now with the code and codes and standards a lot. It's just to understand why things are there, why requirements are there, and build on that to help other people interpret and apply products in the field. So
I think that is awesome. And so with regards to it's like to me, I'm still trying to wrap my head around this, all of the things that Eaton touches, and knowing that you're the director of codes and standards, which means you have to, work with across the spectrum. You guys have dedicated researchers that are staying up to date on codes and standards, and they come and they brief you, or how does that look like for you to stay on top of what's changing in the ever-changing landscape of code?
Well, I'll tell you. So I have a couple philosophies that I drive as best I can within our organization when it comes to a product standard. So if I make panel boards, for example, UL67, I want to make sure that the person who is on the standard is in that process of making and designing panel boards.
Gotcha.
So for each of the products that we make, we want the person who is on the product standard to come out of that product group. They know how our products are tested, what their strengths, what their weaknesses are, how we design them to meet the product standards, and then go above and beyond the basic, the minimum requirements. So they are the most educated to sit at the table. And my other philosophy, so if there's any words that I live by in anything, I don't care if it's codes and standards or whatever it is. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And if you're not one of the cooks, you don't know what you're eating.
Right.
Okay. So my philosophy is I want to be at the table for the codes and standards, but I also want to make sure that our individuals assume leadership roles. They don't just go to a meeting, and I've watched some meetings where you'll look at certain individuals and they're bumps on a log because they sit there all week. They don't say a word. They don't contribute. They don't vote. They just are there. And that's not what our engagement in codes and standards is all about. We want to be engaged. We want to be vocal. We want to make sure that our voice is heard, because we have a very high ethical standard that we hold within Eaton. We have a very high bar in ethics. We have a very high bar in making the right decisions for the right reasons. And we try to bring that to the table in all the codes and standards. So I monitor all of the different product standards, both from a U.S., from America's perspective, a European, Asia Pacific. So I make sure that we have people sitting on the right codes and standards. I'll say product standards. That's the individual you want close to the product. Now, when it comes to codes, and I call those application codes and standards. An application code or a standard may not be the best person for that. May not be a product engineer, an engineer who is engineering a product, because the product engineer, I may have a person who knows how to make a circuit breaker, and he is or she is the best engineer in the entire world on circuit breakers. I may not want that person on the National Electrical Code for marinas or for even overcurrent protection in general, because you'll want a person who has application experience in those application-driven standards and codes.
Makes sense.
70 safe work practices. So what you'll see from an Eaton perspective, if you look on NFPA 70, on who we have on those codes and standards, like on NFPA 70, NFPA 110 and 111 for your backup generation, NFPA 99 for healthcare. Those are going to be application-driven individuals who have the bigger picture of how these parts and pieces go together in a system. So all of those individuals, and what we do is we communicate internally. We make sure that when there is a change in a product standard, all of those individuals who are on other product standards and who are in other business units who might be using that same product, or a product that's listed to that same standard, are all aware of what the changes are. So we have internal mechanisms to streamline the communications between our codes and standards professionals, so that we're all aware, because little changes here, you may see a change in the National Electrical Code that changes 6 or 7 product standards.
Absolutely.
You've got to be aware of that interrelation. So, and in a lot of cases, it's not something that you can put in a chat GBT,
Right.
Okay.
I use the hell out of it, but I agree.
It's not something that is served that way because you're talking about years of knowledge and understanding of how these standards and codes relate to each other. So we have the good thing is Eaton is very well. We have a very good. I don't want to say understanding. It's not the word I want to use. Appreciation for codes and standards and the impact on our businesses. So we have a lot of energy around that. So we have a lot of individuals within our company that, and the other challenge I have is they don't all directly report to me.
Absolutely. Which that and anybody that's set in leadership knows those lines of communication that aren't clearly established.
Yes.
It makes it for a major pain.
Absolutely. So not only do I have to convince the Micahs of the world that this is the right thing to do, I've got to convince all of these other people that this is the right thing to do. And sometimes what I think is the right thing to do is not the right thing to do. Maybe it's the right direction.
Right.
But it needs twisted based upon our discussions. And that's
Absolutely.
the value of codes and standards and communicating and talking to each other, being able to change your perspective.
You have to be able to, right?
Oh,
Maintain a neutral be very observant and logical and take the emotional aspects out of it because we're all inevitably going to have our own personal biases, whatever they may be, because of our lived experiences. So
absolutely.
To your point, just being able to just being collaborative, man. I think you have to have that.
It's a collaborative process internally at Eaton and externally. And I think there's a lot of value to that because, I've said this before and I've chaired a lot of task groups. And I can remember there was a task group on GFCIs for the National Electrical Code. And we were, and I'm chairing it, so I'm not in the debate. And I'm listening to both sides that are arguing and they're raising their hands and they're making their points. And I'm listening to all of these arguments and where the group ended up. Neither side was happy. Okay. Neither side wanted what they came up with. And I said, and I made the statement because I've heard it before and I can't remember where I heard it. When you are collaborating like that, when both parties leave the table and they both don't feel they got what they wanted, you probably wrote some good code.
Right. There was a lot of give there, I imagine.
There was a lot of give and take. And when you walk away, if both parties are not happy, you probably came up with something that's actually going to survive a very long time. So be good.
I love that.
Yeah.
And kind of to it. So we've talked about, the internal processes and stuff like that. What are some of the most significant changes or trends in codes and standards that you've seen recently? Is there anything major? And if so, how do those impact your actual product? Does it cause an all stop? You have to hit the drawing board again and kind of reconvene and go from there? Or what does that look like?
Good question. Some of the biggest changes, I will go back to, I could tell you, okay, talk two different areas. One is just technology. Okay. So I think a big change in technology is found in the interconnected systems.
Agreed.
The fact that years ago, when I started at Eaton in 1996, I was coming out of Crystal River Unit 3, which is a nuclear power plant. And in that nuclear power plant, we had batteries, right? And we had a lot of batteries. And I wrote programs to determine the because SCAM and others didn't have anything. We called it DC Volt Pro at the time. But I wrote a program that would look at the battery load profile. And I knew that if I had to take a nuclear power plant down, it took so many hours. I had so many hours to get it to a safe scenario. And I was going to be running off of batteries. So we would do a battery load profile to determine when that was going to happen. So batteries were heavily used in industrial power system type of applications. Now we have them in homes. We've got energy storage going in residential dwelling units, right? We've got photovoltaic systems. Generators have been around for a long time.
Right.
Transfer switches. That's I would call it a well used and understood technology. But we've now have all of these interconnected things going on, and
absolutely,
people want to tie things on the line side of the service. Disconnecting means so we have a growth.
Does this kind of all tie to that smart grid where the back power and all that other good stuff?
So that's another aspect. So you have what's going on in each of our dwelling units. Okay, the growth of energy storage and things that have not been seen in those worlds, and then you have the power demand on the grid going on. And you have that realization that, okay, I've got electric vehicles hitting the market, and they're going to grow, whether or not, regardless of what your thoughts are on whether or not I'm a gas car kind of guy, but my neighbor, loves electric vehicles. So, regardless of where you are personally, the growth of that industry is going to happen, and whether
you like it or not, it's going down.
Absolutely, whether you like it or not. I mean, there's passionate people on both sides of that coin.
Absolutely.
But regardless of whether that's what's going to go on there, we still are going to have this demand on our power distribution system that our grid has to be able to respond to. So we've got in our industry, and now here's another big one that's brewing. It hasn't hit stardom yet, but it is bound to DC distribution. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you've got this desire now, because now we have a battery energy storage system in the garage or in the wherever it's at. We have photovoltaics putting out DC. Yep. We've got the battery putting out DC. Why do I have to take it from DC to AC, from AC back down to DC?
Yep.
Why don't I just leave it at DC? So now we have groups like Current OS and other organizations that are looking at saying, how do we take, say, a commercial building or ultimately a residential dwelling unit and power it with DC instead of AC? I mean, every one of my computers has a brick on it. That brick is doing the conversion from AC to DC, right?
Right.
We have USB receptacles that's doing the AC to DC. So I think that technology and where technology is going is presenting opportunities for the codes and standards to develop and accommodate that. So in the 2026 code cycle, panel 2, I'm on code panel 2 and I'm on panel 10. And other code panels have seen the same types of public inputs related to DC distribution. We had the debate on panel 2. Do we want to require DC AFCIs and DC GFCIs for branch circuits at 15 and 20 amps? The question of, will a branch circuit be at 15 and 20 amps on the DC system? We don't even know yet, right?
Right.
So we have all of these technology fluctuations going on, and the codes and standards has to try to anticipate it, because what you don't want to happen is have the greatest thing since sliced bread and apple pie and not be able to, or have no codes and standards where we're at right now in marinas. Okay. My marina group came to me and said, hey, we have boats that are electric and they want charged. What code section do I follow?
Interesting. Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's an electric vehicle. And then I look at the definition of electric vehicle and I'm like, no, it's not an electric vehicle.
Yeah.
So I wrote a new article for electric powered vessels, I called it. And I can't remember what the panel 12, ultimately, they accepted the proposal and they've tweaked it since then. But they have a new article now to address. And here's what I learned. It's not just boats, farm vehicles. You got John Deere and all these tractor manufacturers who are coming out with electric tractors.
The Edison, the 18-wheeler trucks that are coming out of there. Some weird hybrid version of something,
Exactly. Yeah. So we're coming out with electrically propelled vehicles that don't meet the definition of electric vehicle, which means we don't have any requirements in the code. So the predicament that my business unit for marinas was in was that we have requests for a product. We don't have product standards, and we have an application that we are going to make an installation.
Right.
So now we have a situation where we have an inspector, a contractor, and a manufacturer working together to say, look,
Absolutely.
we realize we don't have an installation requirement. What do we feel comfortable in? How do we want this to be installed to ensure safety, reduce everybody's liability,
and
make
make
sure that it's accepted? Right? So it's those three things.
Shocker.
It's a shocker. Yeah.
Now on that, so with regards to that, so this is very, very intriguing to me. So this is a new thing that came out. You pointed out with seagoing marine vessels, right?
Yeah.
So what does that look like? So you realize there was a deficiency. How do you get that in front of the codes and standards folks that actually drive the national standard? Is there?
Yep. So there's a process. So what I did, now this came up after the 2023 edition was out.
Okay. Because it's all cyclical by years.
Oh yes, right? Every 3 years, right? So now the good thing is now when the 2023 edition is released, which is say end of December or October, November, or December of 2022, it's then available to be adopted January of 2023, and we're making public inputs for 2026 in October of 2023. Okay, it's boom, boom, boom. So when the code comes out, now I'm out educating and talking, and then I get the phone call from our our engineering manager for marinas, and he presents the predicament. And then so at the same time that we're working with the application, I called a few people that I know in the marina, and I have history in the marina stuff just because, myself and Joe Fellow drove the GFCI requirements in marinas. So I have a whole book on that one too, because that was a problem. That was Lucas Ritz drove the motor. Remember I told you about my empathy thing, right? So,
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. So Lucas Ritz, the story of Lucas Ritz, if anybody ever wants to understand electric shock drowning and become emotionally involved with marinas, read and listen to the story of Lucas Ritz. And his father is a blessed man to take up the sword to try to improve safety in marinas. But I had that drive, and over the few code cycles ago, we drove GFCI requirements and changes in the marina applications in the codes. And then this was brought to me. So then I called my friends on that code making panel 7, and also UL Solutions, and we worked together. I said, look, we need to address this problem of electric powered boats. So what I did first was I just said, look, it's very similar to electric vehicles. So what I originally thought of doing was adding a part and changing the title of Article 625. Change the title of 625, create a definition for electric propelled vehicle, add a new part in that article for the installation requirements. And then I started down the road of making sure that we were including in those requirements what the inspector, the contractor, and our engineering manager agreed on and how they were going to handle the installation that they were currently working on. So then I in talking to the chair of panel 7, I don't know if it was Joe Bablow. I can't remember his name. I think it was Joe, but in any case, he recommended that we make a new article because there's a lot of controversy. It streamlines the controversy. So what we did was I created a new article. I basically took 625, copied it, modified the language, took out anything that didn't make sense, put in things that made sense for that application, and then that became a public input to the National Electrical Code for the 2026 code cycle.
Gotcha.
And then I presented to Code Panel 7 because it was in Savannah, Georgia was where our first meeting was at. No, Charleston, South Carolina. We were in Charleston, and I did my presentation to panel 12, actually. It was panel 12. I presented to panel 7, but it was ultimately panel 12 that put the article in. I didn't know which panel should own that, but because of the farm vehicles and also airport vehicles that are electrical and things like that, all of those. So basically, and I created this thing on my website. I call it the Buck 41 Club. And here's my philosophy. It adds up to a $1.41, a penny. Okay. The penny represents the penny for your thoughts. You might have an idea, which is what this was. I had an idea that, hey, we need a new article in the code. The next one is a nickel, right? And my message there is, if I had a nickel for everybody who had a great idea, I'd be a rich man right now and didn't do anything about it, right?
Right.
So I have the nickel, and then the dime represents the fact that the industry doesn't change on a dime. I can't get an electrical industry to just do what I want it to do. So
Right.
you've got to make a proposal, and you have to get people to review it and start teaching them or helping them understand your point of view. Then you have the quarter, and the quarter is, who's on the quarter? Do you know who's the pictures on the quarter?
Not off that. It's
George.
It's Washington. It?
George,
Yeah.
yes, it's George.
Yeah.
George
Took me
Washington.
a second.
Yes. And what that represents is our founding fathers, because I said, if it took a small group of individuals to create the United States of America, you can create change in the electrical industry, right? In the same way. And then the buck represents the simple majority, because all you need at the table is a simple majority to keep your idea and concept alive. So it all adds up to $1.41. So I call it the $1.41
I love that.
Club. Yeah.
I love that.
But that's basically, if you want to influence change, you have to have a good reason, a good substantiation, a good reason for the change. Then you have to have the ability to craft and know how to craft language, or know somebody who can help you, right?
Absolutely.
And then you need to make your proposal, and then realize you may not. I was lucky that I got what I wanted in this cycle. I mean, I got this code requirement in, and I think it's just it's a reality. Everybody at the table was like, oh yeah, we've seen these before, and it's a pain to have to deal with. So I had that going for me, but we made and we influenced that change. And we were able to do that. But again, it's going to take 3 years. So
Absolutely.
now, even longer, because the 2026 code is going to come out, right? But Pennsylvania just is thinking about adopting the 2020 code. They're
Just
thinking
now.
about
Right.
Okay.
Well, that's the bureaucratic nature of the beast, right? Like, it's
Yes.
got to go through all these parties and get the buy-in and all that. And that brings up a very salient point. And this is one I've had conversations about, specifically surrounding nuclear. It's the most probably regulated industry we have outside of maybe medical.
Oh, yeah.
And I had a great conversation with Dr. Chris Kiefer, and his claim to fame is he's kind of been in charge of the resurgence of nuclear in Canada. Great guy, to your point of having an individual with a commonality and a common sense of purpose to really drive and affect change up there from that aspect of it. But it does kind of bring the point of managing the regulatory environment vice the I need this now aspects of capitalism and getting this done. How do you merge those two factors? Because obviously you have electric boats that need charging. There's no codes and standards that are driving this right now, but this individual still needs to charge these freaking boats. So how do you get past that hurdle?
So it's, and I say it's risk, right? So you try to manage risk for the application. You've got to get the AHJ to buy in on it, right? And whatever the changes that it's about getting all the right players together. You need the authority having jurisdiction to feel comfortable. You need the contractor to feel comfortable with it, because they're accepting liability and risk associated with it, as well as we are too, right? So when you get the right players at the table and everybody says, all right, this is the plan, this is what we're going to do, we don't have anything else to support our decisions, we're going to make basically engineering decisions, and and we're all in agreement. Now you're going to execute and implement something that, based on all of the knowledge that you have, and you can have all your references. You can say, here's what we do with electric vehicles. Here's what we do. And that's why, as an engineer, I always tell people, you never want to be on a witness stand and say, it's because I know what I'm doing, right? You always want to be able to say, I followed IEEE whatever, NEC whatever. These are the rules, and that are peer reviewed, that have gone through ANSI processes and things like that. So you have to make a decision on the spot that you all feel good with, and that you feel, in some cases, it's going to go above and beyond what the actual code will probably say, because you're taking those extra steps.
Makes sense.
But now, the really frustrating part of everything, in my opinion, is when you have a state or a jurisdiction that is on an older version of the code that refuses to update to the latest version of the code, and you've already addressed what they're going with. Okay.
Right.
Now they can, even if they say, look, we're going to put an electric vehicle in. We're on an edition of the code that has no requirements for these electric vehicles. The latest edition of the code has these requirements. We're going to use that in this application. You can come up with that scenario, but even when you do that, you're going outside of what the state has adopted. Your risk is lower because now you're following some level of an industry practice, but you are accepting some level of liability because you're not following the rules that you're supposed to follow as adopted by the state. So if somebody gets hurt and you say, well, I went off of the 2026
the most current
code instead of the 1923 code, and they go, well, you know, somebody could say, if you followed the 23 code, that guy wouldn't have died. Well, now you're still in that world of legal gray area. You know,
litigation drives the prize, doesn't it?
Man, it does. It sure does. It sure does. But you know, at the end of the day, you want to make good, educated decisions and not in a vacuum, and come to a set of agreement to move forward with whatever it is that you're doing. Because we have new technologies hitting the street every day. We've got this pulsed power now. Where they're pulsing DC and it's at 400 volts. And, you know, we've had to change the codes and standards and the installation requirements to accommodate that. But there was a period of time where we really didn't have rules around the installation of that. And you don't want a new solution to fail. I mean, I was in a meeting one time, we were talking about DC distribution and there was a company there who wanted requirements around a new technology. And I got it, you know, because I'm a manufacturer, I get it. But somebody at the table asked the question, well, why are you wanting these? Why are you supporting these requirements when you're going to have to change your product and it's going to impact your product? And his comment was, look, I believe in the technology. I know this is going to change our world in the future. If it fails because we didn't have the right codes and standards in place and we hurt somebody or we burn a building down,
look at it.
You're going to kill the technology for many years, and progress takes a back seat. So you got to do things right the first time because nobody wants to hurt anybody or, you know, hurt what do you call it, property, damage property. So you want to bring safe solutions to the marketplace, and I think you do it through collaboration and openness. You don't want to do things in a vacuum. Never in a vacuum.
And with regards to that marina situation, so were you guys able to come up with an acceptable solution that mitigated risk, and you were able to implement it in a timely fashion? Yeah, we were, and that's being, you know, there was an individual at the table on panel 7. I can't remember his name, but they're doing that. I mean, it's not like we were the only ones. There are other people doing that already. Right. You know, and that's another very important thing. Because of my awareness of codes and standards, they brought it to me. I told them, well, we don't have any code for that. And we started down the road of how do we do this safely? But then I was like, well, wait a second. Let's change the code. Right. There were other applications where people were not bringing them to the table. They've already instituted. And the one gentleman explained, and he had pictures of an application that wasn't an Eaton installation. It was a different manufacturer of pedestals, but they were doing something similar. And he was explaining all of the things that they agreed upon between the contractor, the inspector, and the manufacturer and the design engineer. Okay. But that's another problem because now you have that one marina who took option A. You've got a different marina who took option B. You don't have consistency. Right. Between these installations. So you are, you know, you move from Massachusetts and you go down to Alabama and you go, hey, I'm going to work on this marina. And now what the heck did they do? This isn't how we ended up there. It's totally different. And then you can say, well, I question what they did here or there. So Right.
The codes and standards brings that consistency to the table. So that, in some cases you may be doing something and not even realize this should be a code requirement, or there should be something in the NEC or a product standard to govern it,
Absolutely.
And if you understand the process, or if you have the right connections, then you say, okay, I know how to get that done. And then you can make your proposals and stir the pot.
And to your point, like you said, it's amazing with new technology. So we're adapting this new thing. You got to go through trial and error. You're going to do it, and you may get away with 1 or 2 installations and try your new technology. But to your point, it's going to be the O&M side becomes almost untenable because there is no standardization across that board. So to me, that from a layman's view of this, that would be probably the most pivotal piece, is getting everybody on the same sheet of music, if you will, to make sure we're all executing to a standard, which is the entire point.
Absolutely. It levels the playing field. It makes sure everybody is consistent. Now, you can go above and beyond. That's perfectly fine, but at least you have, and it is a bare minimum requirement, right?
Absolutely.
So, in fact, what's funny was I heard somebody, they said it was a contractor, and he goes, I strive to meet the National Electrical Code. And someone else in the room
said, you strive to minimums?
Yes, you strive to achieve the minimum you can possibly do. And I never thought of it that way.
It's true, though. Yeah, 100%.
It is so true. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, what a way to really hurt somebody, You're like, I'm striving to meet the code. Well, you're striving to do the bare minimum. I'm like, whoa.
Right.
But it is true that, but it at least establishes a baseline that everybody has to meet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And with regards to, and I understand the importance of standard codes, metrics. We have mil spec. My entire career was driven around standards. I am seeing in nuclear, and I had like I mentioned earlier, I'd have a conversation with Chris Kiefer and also Robert Bryce on the matter, and we were talking about just to get your plans approved from a regulatory burden aspect from the nuclear side, it can cost companies an upwards of $10 million up to $100 million for new projects before you even lay the first piece of rebar. What do you guys, from the regulatory perspective, are there efforts to make sure that's streamlined and efficient and readable? If you look at today's tax code in the U.S., you may be able to. I'm not the smartest guy. I can't read through 1,000 pages of tax code to figure that out. Are y'all focused, or is there an aspect of efficiency, simplicity, streamlining, or anything like that goes, or is considered for codes?
So when you think about, remember, there's two aspects here. There's the product standards, and then there's the application codes, right? So from a product standards perspective, what we do from an internal perspective, if I'm, say I'm a design engineer and I come out with this new Van Ducky. I come up with this great idea about this Van Ducky, and I'm going to tell you, I'm going to say, look, man, this Van Ducky all you have to do is you put it in the house, and it will protect all of your conductors, and you don't need circuit breakers, you don't need fuses. All you got to do is have this within one. Yeah, it's got to be within the walls, And I go, well, man, I mean, there's no product for this. Now there's a process. So what we have in our organization. When an engineer has an idea like this Van Ducky, Codes and Standards is contacted and says, okay, what product standard would I make for this? A lot of products, like if I was going to make a circuit breaker, I mean, we've been making circuit breakers, since Jesus was around. So, but so I don't have to have that question, but you bring a Van Ducky and you say, what product standard? So now I'm in a longer process now. Because I'll take a look at this, understand what it is. I will use our codes and standards experts internally to come up with what we think. Then in some cases, we'll hire a third party like UL Standards and Engagement, and we'll get them to come in and we'll say, look, we'll describe it to them, all NDA, non-disclosure agreements. And we'll describe what the product is, what it does, and then they come back with us with what their professional opinion is on what standards would apply and whether or not there's an opportunity to say, no, there is no standard, and now you need to develop one. And then we would, in some cases, we've done that. And we've worked with UL Standards and Engagement to create what they call an outline of investigation, an OOI. And when basically what that does is They take it, they get a group of experts,
Yep.
and they all look at this Van Ducky and come up with what they think would be the test criteria to make sure it does what it is expected to do.
That makes sense.
And then they create a standard that then I can list my product to. If you look in the National Electrical Code, you'll see an OOI out there for the OBC AFCI or the TCF fuses. Those are your cube fuses, or your CF fuses, your cube fuses, and a few other. There's a lot of different solutions that are available that are listed to outlines of investigation because no standard existed for it.
Exactly.
That adds time to the process, and you have to know that very early. What I don't want, is an engineer and a product manager to come to me and say, we got this Van Ducky. It's labeled. We're going to ship it next week. What standard do I need to list it to? And I'll be like, well, wait a second. You aren't shipping that. Not next week, but probably not for about another 3 or 4 years, because we need to develop the right product standards for it. But when it comes to standard products, let's say we come out with a new circuit breaker. We know the standards that are associated with it. Like we brought to market a breaker and an EV charger that's all in one. So we have an electric vehicle charger that can be installed inside of a panel board. We knew what standards we were going to have to put it through. We bring the standards development group. We went with a UL label on that, and they're a part of that process throughout the entire journey, so that when we have a ship date, we make sure that we're going to hit that ship date, understanding the product testing that has to go on and all that jazz. Now, when it comes to codes, if I had like my services division, if they're going to design a structure and they've got to go through you got to pull the permit, you got to do all that stuff. That's all standard given things as well. So, but I guess the only thing I can really speak to is the product development side of the business. So,
and then, and this is one that's kind of curious, more for the small business guys. I'm running across tons of people that are actually in the entrepreneurial space and developing new products, etc. So this small mom and pop guy may not have the slightest idea of codes and standards. What advice would you give to small business owners to kind of become aware of what's out there? Any good references or anything like that?
So here's what I would suggest. So if I was like a small manufacturer, say Tom's Garage.
Switchgear manufacturer. I have several clients that are in I guess they have the codes, but like smaller businesses may not be in understanding all of the applicable code to it, right? So
if you're a manufacturer, a small manufacturer, you've already got the UL side of the business down, right?
Yeah,
so you've got to. If you're going to ship a product, there's a different story. If it was Tom Domitrovich with a great idea and I invented a product. That's probably a different subject.
That would be a better example to use in this particular case than mine, I think. So we'll go back to the widget there.
Okay, yeah. So if I am, I call it. I always use this name. I've used it since I was a kid. Joe Schmuckatelli. If I was Joe Schmuckatelli and it was Schmuckatelli's Garage, and I come out with this Van Ducky, and I want to sell this, and I want third party. Now remember, there's the reason you would get a third party. Not even all of the products in the electrical business are required to be listed.
Right.
Okay. The listing, we do the listing. And this is another great, people ask, well, why do you list a product if the code doesn't require it to be listed? It's because of those 3 pillars, right? So I want to make sure that I get a third party to look at this, because the inspector who's going to have to approve it is going to ask all the right questions. And if it hasn't been evaluated by a third party organization, that's the acceptability. They're going to go, nope, ain't happening not in Shelby County, right? So if I want to sell a product that I feel is going to need, I want to cover myself from safety and liabilities, and I want it to be accepted, then I'm going to have to consult a NERDL, nationally recognized testing laboratory. Now, if you look at, there are a lot of them out there. ETL Intertech is one. You could contact them, let them know this is what I've got, and I want to list it. Now, you may not even know what standard, so you may have to figure out. You're going to have to. I mean, it's not going to be free. right? It's not like you're going to call Intertech or TUV Rhineland or UL and say, hey, I want you to tell me what I need to do, and they're going to do it for free. So you're going to have to pay somebody, and probably from a nationally recognized testing laboratory or associated with one of those. The way UL is set up, they have UL Standards and Engagement, and then you have UL Solutions. UL Solutions is the .com. UL Standards and Engagement is the .org. So that one is a non-for-profit, one is a for-profit. You would probably go to UL Solutions, go to the for-profit group and say, hey, this is what I want to bring to the table. And they'll basically walk you through the whole process. They'll review it. They'll do what they do for me. Okay. And now they'll probably, they're definitely going to charge you for it. But you're going to need somebody to walk you through that process. And then if you want to get a patent on it, that's going to be a law firm. It's not going to be.
I've dealt with that crap before, man. Jesus, that's a process.
Oh yeah, it's a process. So you have multiple aspects, but if you believe in that widget, then you're going to need to hire a lawyer to get the legal sides of all of this done. You're going to have to work with a nationally recognized testing laboratory to get the other aspect done. Now, if you are then the next aspect is the code side, because especially if it's going to be an electrical widget, you're going to have to follow the rules of the National Electrical Code. Your best bet is to get involved with the IAEI. Because if you're involved with that organization and so what I benefit from through my engagement with the organization is not necessarily the knowledge I get when I go to the meeting. That's one thing, but it's all of the people that I've met.
Huge.
I go to a section meeting, I go to a chapter meeting, and I've been to various chapter meetings where I've been asked to present, and I show up, and you got Tom Lichtenstein, he's from UL, okay, or you got Jeff Fecteau from UL, you got Susan from Intertech, right? So you've got the standards organizations there, you've got people who sit on code panels there, and I build my Rolodex. You get those names, and I tell you what, they're more than happy. I mean, all you did was you reached out and said, hey, you want to do a program? Hell yeah, we'll get together.
Absolutely.
We'll talk.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So it's all about sharing and growing together as human beings and learning, because you may say, hey, I've got this question. And you called Jeff Fecteau, and Jeff goes, well, I think I know the answer to this. And you give him the question, and he goes, whoa, wait a second.
Right.
And he phones a friend, right?
Absolutely.
So the next thing you know, you've got like 3 or 4 industry experts helping you, and you did not pay a dime for any of that knowledge because you met them at an IEI meeting. You're an IEI member. They recognize
your network instead of you paying for consultative services.
Exactly. But when the rubber hits the road, then when the rubber hits the road, you'll have a better idea on the UL standard world, on how to meet these standards. You'll have a better understanding of who the players are. Can I go to Intertech? Can I go to UL? Can I go to TUV? Because you've talked to all those individuals. And then from a National Electrical Code perspective, your engagement there and going to those meetings and listening, now you know who to ask the right questions of and understand the proper application of whatever it is that you're bringing to the market. So it's no different than what I do. I mean, I would say it doesn't matter the size, because if you go to no matter what state you're in, you're going to have an IEI chapter. And I manage the chapter for West Virginia. I don't do all the education. I bring in
speakers or whatever it may be.
Absolutely. I bring in Jeff Fecteau's been to our place. Tom Moore from Ohio has been down to our group, and Tom was chair of panel 7 for a while. He's now chair of, I think, panel 16. So, you bring, we call them circuit riders. You bring these people in, they present, they share their contact information, and you shake their hands, you get the face-to-face contact. Absolutely. And then when you call them, you say, hey, I saw you at a West Virginia chapter or a Pennsylvania chapter or whatever.
Absolutely.
Or a section meeting. So it's an investment in your career and your future. So that's where I mean, if I was going to talk to, and it doesn't matter, I try to tell small manufacturers, get involved.
Yes.
Get a booth. If you're a manufacturer, get a booth at an IEI meeting.
Absolutely.
Show up.
And we're using that even from the recruitment perspective. I'm not in the books and doing the codes and standards and running the test equipment, but I'm still engaged at Power Test and doing this thing because you have to build the network. To your point, I think that's the most salient part. Become involved in the organizations, build out your professional network. Don't just use them for transactions. Build an actual relationship, and that way they can call you. You can call them.
Exactly.
And lo and behold, it works out, right? It's your network is your net worth in this business.
It is, and you use the right word. It's a relationship. My boss asks me sometimes, why I go to a certain meeting or I go to certain things or I'm doing certain things that I'm doing. It's about relationships.
Absolutely.
I don't, and the other thing is, don't ever do for somebody expecting something.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You're just setting yourself up to get your feelings hurt at that point, man. So definitely not the way to do it and not go from there.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
I'm with you. Give it all away with zero expectations. And this is kind of a little off topic, kind of goes into marketing, but I'm a big fan of this guy named Alex Hormozy who writes. He's got a brilliant marketing mind, and the formula is 80% give, 20% ask, right? So if I'm giving away everything that I know and I can give you for free, I'm going to occasionally say, hey, I've got this role open, right? And that's just part of building a relationship. It's not rocket science.
Absolutely. Yeah. We hired in, John McCamish from IBW local up in Seattle, Washington. He was on co-panel 2 with me for ages. And he decided to retire from IBW. And I was like, hey, you want to come work for Eaton? I'd love to have you on board, and that individual, you're friends with that individual, their ins and outs. I've argued with him and we didn't agree on certain things. We did agree on some things, but it's all good. And that's how we grow. I mean,
couldn't agree more, Tom.
Yeah.
I think that is fantastic. And we're getting pretty close here, man. We're at an hour and 15. And one question I always like to ask everybody, and I get the broadest range of answers. So if you could go back in time and talk to young Tom who was just getting his EIT knocked out, what advice would you give to younger Tom?
I would say believe more in yourself.
Ain't that the truth?
Think about growing up and everything that we do. You're always, in some cases, there are a lot of people who are very sure of themselves and what they're doing. But when you are, I'm a creative person, obviously. And, I would go back and I think about things that I started and you go, boy, you know what? That would have been, man, if you would have just put 110% into that and believed in what you were going for instead of shifting gears a little bit, that could have really been something, So, but I'm very happy where I'm at now. And I think it's because over time I started to realize that life is short. Life is short, and you've got your gut, and you've got your knowledge, and just go with it. Just don't be afraid. Just take that next step and dive in the deep end. You never know what's going to happen.
Agree.
And accept failure.
You have to.
Yeah, failure is growth.
That's where you learn the most. You don't learn the most in your wins. You learn the most in your failures.
That is exactly right. And I used to think failure was bad, and I never really realized. I don't know when it was. It was like a switch going off, where I just was like, yeah, I screwed that up, screwed that rolly up. But I learned from it, and I'm never going to do that again. Or I improved on it over here. So. That would be two key things: believe in yourself and accept failure as a success.
I agree. I love those, and I think that's super salient. And it's not just you and I. You're a director of code and standards. I've got friends. We've had just ad nauseum conversations on what we coined it as imposter syndrome. Right? You don't know. It's the fear of the unknown. You walk in, you have this fear, self-doubt, and all that. And not realizing that every one of your colleagues out there is going through the same crap, and going through
Absolutely
it.
right.
Yep. He recounted the story. He's like, man, I work with some of these most brilliant people I've ever run across in my mind. And they're like, Micah, I'll use me as the example instead of throwing my buddy out there. But he's like, these guys who are some of the most accomplished people working for some of the largest industry, powerhouses. And they're going through the same crap you are, and I thought that was very enlightening because you don't know. It's all our lived experiences.
Absolutely right. My dad used to say, I forget who it was. I forget who it was, said something to me. And it was like one of those things where you go, wow, he was like a leader in something, and he made a statement and sort of hurt my feelings, so to speak, And my dad looked at me and he goes, you know what? He said, he puts his pants on just like you do. What makes him special? His opinion isn't worth anything. And this guy over here said this, and that guy over there said that. Their opinions are actually worth more than his, And
Right.
I was like, that's not a bad way to look at it.
Definitely not.
Make lemonade out of lemons every day of the week and twice.
Absolutely, man. You just got to keep a positive outlook and rock and roll.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love it. Awesome, Thomas. Well, many thanks for sharing so many freaking valuable insights. I got a lot out of it. And like I said, it's just one of those kind of things that, we all live by them. They're all standards. Yep. They're all codes. But it's like to get the inside baseball of what that process looks like, how things come to bear, and all that other good stuff is just vitally important. And I've definitely learned tons from this. And you, like me, are one of those who loves to spread your wealth of knowledge and all that good stuff. Where's the easiest place to find you online or reach out to you?
Best place. I got a website, thomasdomitrovich.com or tdunplugged.com.
Okay, I haven't. Yeah. I didn't know you did that one. I have to check that one out as well.
It goes to the same spot, but who gave me the idea for TD Unplugged was Jeff Sargent from NFPA.
I'll be damned.
Yeah, he told me, he says, you should call your YouTube channel TD Unplugged. And I'm like, oh, man.
That.
I loved it. Yeah. So, but my website is, you can go into the About Me and find my YouTube, my LinkedIn, my Facebook, my Instagram, all that stuff. So, I encourage anybody to connect with me online. I post just like you do, and I go live, and I do a lot for IEI News Live as well every Tuesday at 12. So
it is fantastic. Like I said, you're definitely a force for good out there. I've enjoyed the content that you put out there. I want to watch more that I can, but we're running a damn full-time business.
I hear you. I'm with you.
I absorb it on the weekends when I can, when I've got a little downtime, and sit and watch the lives again. And you're putting out truly fantastic, helpful information to the industry. And we try to encourage as many people as we can to be more like you and Tom Wire and the other folks that are doing it. So thank you so much for what you do for the industry, Tom.
Hey, same right back at you, Micah. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Well, I'll let you get back to your rat killing and running around. Thank you so much again for everything. And until next time, folks, Micah out.
Peace out.
Thanks for tuning in to the Power Relay with Micah Clay. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to like, subscribe, and leave a review. For more insights, contact info, job offerings, and other content, check out our Linktree sites at Linktree/Micah W. Clay or Linktree/Southern Staffing. We'd love to hear any feedback. And if you know anyone we should highlight, feel free to drop us a message. As always, thanks to those who work tirelessly to keep the lights on. Until next time.